So we're here to do a speed VOD review of Mad Lions versus G2 on week 1 day 3 of LEC Spring. And then, so the ban's coming out. Mad is going to ban LeBlanc, Caitlyn, and Xin, and G2 is going to ban TF, Lee Sin, and Diana. I think LeBlanc is a pretty strong champion, Caitlyn's very, very strong, and Xin is the best jungler on the patch. And then TF is also very broken, you have to ban it if you're red side. And then Lee Sin and Diana, two of the other good junglers. So, Mad opened by taking Thresh. I think this kind of gives away a lot of how you want your draft to go, but it's also pretty versatile in that you can like take Thresh Aphelios, for example, and then G2 responds by picking Xin, or by picking Jhin, who keeps their options open, and it's just a good, safe blind pick. Then at the very end, they lock in Viego jungle. And I think this is kind of weird because of the top 5 junglers, Jarvan is still open, and Jarvan is good into Jhin, first of all, because he can just ult him and Jhin doesn't have any mobility, but also because Jarvan can play low resource, and you generally want to draft either a high resource champion at the start, like Jinx, or low resource champions to keep your back end open. So that's what we see Mad Lions do here. They take Jinx and they take Jarvan, two of the very good champions on this patch, and then G2 respond with Akshan. Now, I don't think I'm that good at understanding Akshan, and especially in pro play, but so I'll just let this be what it is. Okay, now we see G2 is banning Wukong and Malphite, and these are bad matchups for Akshan because they just are able to jump on him, and he does not really do a lot of damage to them because of their armor stacking. So this tells Mad that G2 wants to put Akshan top. Right, so now G2 pick Yuumi, and this actually kind of, because if they plan to put Akshan top, then they pick Yuumi. Right now they're kind of lacking frontline, and their frontline is just like a Viego with the Yuumi on him. And that makes it hard for them to play against Jinx and Jarvan. Because like when Jarvan jumps Jhin, the only thing that stops Jinx from just killing him is a frontline. So knowing that they want to put Akshan top, Mad are free to blind pick Ornn. And then they pick Corki blind because Corki is really broken. But now G2 has the last pick, and I think they should flex the Akshan mid if they're able to. Akshan has a pretty good matchup into Corki with like high wave clear and good skirmishing. It can help Viego push his early advantage over Jarvan. And then you can blind something like Kayle, who gets a free lane into Ornn. And when you have a Kayle, her like W and her R, right? They make your front line, you can have like a pseudo front line that's much tankier. So like your Viego isn't able to be focused down. But now this is Kassadin, and Kassadin can't help Viego's roams that much by roaming to like help his invades. And G2's draft is kind of strange in that it lacks a lot of frontline. It lacks like a solid engage. It's just a bunch of skirmishers. While Mad has a very, easy to play, low risk front to back team that also has excellent zone control around all objectives with, Corki, with Jinx, Ornn, right? And then G2 has to find like creative ways to walk in to be able to do that. Well, I mean, the Yuumi pick, they had to pick it. Well, they knew the enemy's bot lane was Jinx Thresh. And then Rakan and Pyke were banned. And Pyke's kind of a strange ban, I think. But Not and Leo are open. which aren't that bad to play into Jinx Thresh, so those could also be an option to consider. But I'll get into game. Alright, Jinx starts Longsword, Jin starts Boots, Yuumi starts Relic Shield. And then we see here, Akshan and Veigar are going for Invade because they're much stronger level 1 against Ornn and Jarvan. And Corki, although he's like stronger than Cassidy, right, but he also doesn't do anything. So Jankos is just walking around. He gets 2 out of 3 of the wolves, and then he almost kills Elyoya here. Then Elyoya wants to go to the spot side, and because the enemy is a Corki, he can't really do much. So Jankos comes to the bot side, but because they have Yuumi again, so now Kaiser's just able to come here, and he pushes Jankos off, and Jarvan gets this red. Which is not really the worst thing to happen. And everyone's just farming. Okay, Broken Blade managed to steal Crab. It's pretty big, but the Crab EXP was nerfed a lot for laners on the last patch. Or it was 11.23, I think. This is not huge for him, and Armut has cloth armor refillable. So he can just hang out in lane for a long time. And then Jankos keeps invading the Jarvan, which is good. Well, in one way it's good because Kassadin Corki, even though you might think that like Corki bullies Kassadin, right? But most of the time he can just sustain up, and he's not really worried about that. He's more worried about getting ganked. And that is what Jankos achieves by invading the Jarvan. And Akshan, of course, also wants to be able to pressure his lane as much as possible. But on the flip side, Viego is a higher econ champion than Jarvan. Jarvan can survive on 1 item, 2 items for the rest of the game. And Viego will, want to get completions like Death Dance and Starks. So here is a really questionable moment, I think, of the game. Because obviously the enemy is stronger on this Rift fight. Jarvan is 6, they have a Thresh instead of Yuumi, and they have Corki instead of Kassadin, right? And then Jin is already bottom, but G2 chooses to go for this gank. When instead they could take Dragon, and they could take bot side camps, and Viego and Jin can both get plates. And like, your team is already weaker on the Rift fight, and their bot lane has already shown to move to mid. So it just seems like there's no reason for you to come and try and contest this before Rift. So Jankos ends up getting the air drake. And then it's not just because of the Yuumi death, it's just kind of the intent in general of the play. And even though they banned some of Arma's comfort champs like Wukong and Malphite, he's still doing okay on this Ornn, just sitting around in the lane. Warden's Mail is really strong, of course, as an item here. So now they're switching this Ornn out of top lane to get him away from Akshan, and he can just relax in bot lane. And then Mad's bot lane is still stronger, and they are able to just run around the map, control every fight. And Jinx is getting a lot of plates now. Without being under much threat at all, because she has the Thresh and the enemy is Kassadin. So Aoya is doing this crab, and he gets found, but it's okay, it's just a flash. And this is a really good play from G2. Actually, even though Matt have vision here, right? They don't see Jankos wrapping around this whole time. So they don't see him on this crab because of his E. And then he's invisible. And he comes up here, and G2 should get 2 kills here. And they do. One goes to Cassidy, one goes to Action. Yeah. But now Jinx is free farming plates again. It's really hard for this Jhin to be able to do anything because he doesn't have people to hit, and all the people he has to hit are tanks, and of that he's getting poked by Corki Jinx. Just around the map, right? His support is with the jungler. Man, take the Drake. And then Broken Blade dies mid. But it's just really hard to play because Akshan, he isn't a champ that's able to chew through front lines either. He needs like chaos in a fight so he can get in, swing on somebody. Now, that is once again, you see it in this area over here. There are only blue wards, and so it's actually really dangerous for Cassidy. So just because Matt only has 2 champions that need resources, so the other 3 are just able to run around the map and try to put pressure on G2, so that when their 4 econ champions need to farm, they feel scared. And then I think here, they're unlucky that this Ornalt catches the Yuumi, so the Yuumi also goes down and can't reattach to Jankos. Right, like Jankos and Aoya are like even on econ, but like Jarvan is just 50% more useful at least as a champion when he's not given money. And Corki has his Ludens finished, so he's doing a lot of damage now. And Jinx is on almost 3 items, while Jhin is barely on 2. So as soon as she completes IE, she's going to be extremely hard to deal with. Like, they're able to catch Ornn here, but this Ornn doesn't care. It's not like he needs to be a super tank to tank any of the members on G2, right? Because they're all like mid damage skirmish type champions. There's no like Jinx or Aphelios. I think even here, instead of going what is this thing called now? It's like the Frozen Gauntlet. He can just go lock it. He's never fighting anybody alone, right? The slow is not that important, and the locket saves him $1,000. And he gets to shield his carries. The Thresh can go. Well, Thresh can buy Eventroud or Shrelia. I'm not sure Eventroud is that good of an item most of the time. But, and then after that, the Ornn can just keep buying support items that uses, because he doesn't have a lot of farm. He has 167 at 23, which is like, 7 a minute. But then, he can just support his team, right? He's just standing here in the front. It doesn't take a lot of damage. So he doesn't really need big tank stats. He can just buy Knight's Vow, he can buy Redemption, He can buy Locket. These are cheap items that'll make him like 90% as tanky, but give him 90% more utility. But this game is pretty hard to win for G2. From the state, none of them have a lot of items. Cassidy is still only 13 at 24 minutes because Mad have done such a good job of trying to chase him around the map and stop him from free farming. So, and here, Jinx just able to clean up because Jin and Yumi are overextended. This game should be over pretty soon, right? Chase the bot lane. And that's the end. So I think overall, G2, the draft was a little bit unconventional. And they had too many high econ champions that need like just resources to be able to play, like Viego, Akshan, Kassadin. And you can consider Jin low econ, but then Yumi is pretty high econ. But this just, and they also have no frontline. So this just leads to Mad being able to funnel all their carries, a lot of money, and just survive the hard lanes, the top, with Ornn. And then there's not much that G2 can do after that. I think they had to make more use of their flex pick by the early picking Akshan. So if Mad pick Ornn, you pick a scaling top leader and you flex Akshan mid so that he can follow the Viego who wants to invade Jarvan because Viego is stronger early. And this will, allow G2 to have some more momentum going into like the mid game when Mad begin to deathball. And then I think also the Rift Herald fight was not ideal. Where Viego, he comes up here, but you can just give the Herald, he can take this camp, and then he can take Jarvan's bot camps that are going to spawn soon. Like, Jarvan is taking the Rift, and Viego can be on his golems. Then, after that, he can take his chickens. And then also bot platings, and that's like a 300, 400 gold return for losing the Rift Herald. Even though like Mad really like Rift Herald, and most teams these days really like Rift Herald, because it kind of, when you have Rift Herald, you kind of dictate the like how the map plays in terms of which lane pushes and which lane you give up, so that you're able to like funnel into a carry. And just like, if you want to push Kassadin out, you can rift his lane, and then he can't just like go to another lane. So Rift Herald is very strong these days, and a lot of team comps want to play around it, but in this case, I think it's just not feasible given you have Yumi, Kassadin, and an under-leveled Viego, and Mad had rotated their bot lane up early at like 7:30 to prepare for this. And see right here, they don't even base, they're just walking up through the jungle, and they come to mid. And this lets Corki get a free recall when he's a little bit low. And then Mad just keep the pressure going. And Kassadin and none of G2's champions are able to get that much time alone or resources, and they eventually just get deathballed on. So I think that's the conclusions in this game. I think it's cool that G2 was trying a different type of draft, but there were certain weaknesses that proved to be too much.